to make these sorts of tragedies stop occurring, or at least prevent them from occurring with the regularity and the enormity that they do. And I said it's an understandable anger and frustration. That's because there are disingenuous people, politicians and such, who use, the thoughts and prayers to hide behind not really doing anything and not being willing to do anything. But I don't want, what bothers me is then thoughts and prayers get denigrated. The idea of thoughts and prayers gets, disrespected. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. And I've talked about it before in relation to other terrible events. And the first thing that a lot of people who are angry at the seeming lack of willingness for certain politicians to get on board with creating tougher gun laws is that thoughts and prayers don't stop gun violence. And while that's very true, there is an awful lot of scientific evidence about thoughts and prayers and the positive relations and benefits that they do have, even from a distance, in healing and in changing people's energies, because prayer is all about energy. That's all it's about. And as we know, as quantum physics continues to discover, and somehow the rest of the science continues to ignore, is that energy is the basis of everything. And that what we focus on, we create. And that goes to thoughts, which is what prayers are. Thoughts of positive, loving, healing intent. That's what a prayer is. Thoughts are what create everything. And what if you have the ability, what if we all have the ability to change, not just to possibly heal or make someone feel better, but to change hearts and minds in a positive way through healing, through prayer. Through prayer. So I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit and talk about the science of it. We're going to start with the benefits of prayer, scientifically proven, on the person who prays. So now this information is coming from Psychology Today. So, this is not woo-woo magazine. Okay? This is Psychology Today, a well-respected psychological magazine that publishes the most current research in the area of psychology and other areas of medicine. So in this article, according to a 2013 Pew Research poll, over half of Americans pray every day. And a poll before that found that over 75% of Americans believe that prayer is an important part of their daily life. Pardon me, others indicate that even some atheists and religiously unaffiliated individuals admit that they sometimes pray. Well, of course, that has to go in the column of those of us who call themselves SBNRs, spiritual but not religious. We've talked about that a lot on this show. Anyway, our species has probably been praying for as long as we have been able to contemplate our existence. True. And you wonder why, Because as some would have it, it's just a silly thing to do. And though we may never be able to establish evidence that a deity or spiritual force actually hears our prayers, in recent years scientists have begun to consider the potential effects of prayer. Tangible, measurable effects of prayer. And this research is suggesting that prayer may be very beneficial, and beneficial on numerous levels. But we'll just start with 5 scientifically supported benefits of prayer for the prayer. And then we'll talk about the research that's being done on what we call distance prayer. That's praying for others. But this is the benefits of prayer that you get as someone who does pray. Studies have demonstrated that self-control is like a muscle and that prayer improves it. Like a muscle, it can get fatigued, and you can only do so many push-ups before your muscles give out. Similarly, activities that require self-control are tiring, making it more difficult to make good choices the more you have to use your self-control muscle. Think about it. You're more likely to lose your cool or engage in mindless eating when you are mentally exhausted. So the recent research indicates that prayer can help you to get more out of your self-control muscle. Research participants who said a prayer prior to a mentally exhausting task were better able to exercise self-control following that task. In addition, other studies demonstrate that prayer reduces alcohol consumption, which may reflect the exercise of self-control. So, findings such as these suggest that prayer has an energizing effect. Yes, because it's all about energy. I keep saying that. Prayer makes you nicer. Researchers found that having people pray for those in need reduced the amount of aggression they expressed following an anger-inducing experience. In other words, prayer helps you not to lose your cool. Prayer makes you more forgiving. Researchers found that having people pray for a friend or romantic partner made them more willing to forgive those individuals. And prayer increases trust. Recent studies found that having people pray together with a close friend increased feelings of unity and trust. This finding is interesting because it suggests that praying with others can be an experience that brings people closer together. And so social prayer may thus help build close relationships. And number 5 is prayer offsets the negative health effects of stress. Researchers found that people who prayed for others were less vulnerable to the negative physical health effects associated with financial stress. Also, it was the focus of others that seemed to be contributing to the stress buffering effects of prayer. So praying for others helped to reduce the prayer's stress. Praying for material gain did not counter the effects of stress. So thinking about the welfare of others may be a crucial component of receiving personal benefits from prayer. Now, scientists and public intellectuals who are critical of religion focus on what they believe to be the irrationality of religious belief. Why waste time believing in things that have no supporting scientific evidence? These critics typically fail to consider the fact that scientific studies are finding measurable benefits of religious faith. And as I've discussed here and there and here, religion is complicated. The here and here are links to different articles that this writer has written. It can be both good and bad for your health, depending on a number of variables. However, there's a growing body of evidence indicating that prayer, a behavior often associated with religion, can be beneficial for individuals and society. You don't have to be religious to pray, or you can just call it meditation, because that's what it is. But yes, sometimes it is conflated with religion, and oftentimes these religions have restrictive ideas that others may find unhelpful. So that can, I believe, have an effect on, a negative effect on how effective your prayers might be. So that's something to think about too. So yes, that article was written by Dr. Clay Rutledge, PhD, who's done a lot of research in this area. So now another major researcher in this area is Andrew Newberg, who's done a lot of research on prayer and what the influence prayer has in our lives. In this case, he's talking about the benefits of meditation and prayer, and that it changes our brains. And he's done scans of brain activity when subjects are meditating or in prayer. And what he's found is that the front part of the brain, which is used in focusing attention and concentration, is very active during these states. And that our brains change. Hold on a second, I'm having trouble getting this. Oh, okay, here we go. So, religious and spiritual experiences are typically highly complex, involving emotions, thoughts, sensations, and behaviors. These experiences seem far too rich and diverse to derive solely from one part of the brain. It is much more likely that many parts of the brain are involved, and additionally, very different patterns of brain activity may appear depending upon the particular experience the individual is having. For example, a near-death experience might result in different activity patterns from those found in a person who is meditating. Such evidence indicates that more than a single God nodule is at work, that in fact a number of structures in the brain work together to help us experience spiritual feelings and religious experiences. So I don't want to get too far into the brain aspect of it, but apparently when we pray, the brain changes and neural pathways are set up that create stronger empathy and other really positive things. So now let's talk about what we call distant prayer. That's the kind of prayer that we're talking about when we're talking about praying for people who have been victims of these kinds of shootings. And there have been some very important studies on that. In fact, the idea of even researching the power of prayer in just 4 or 5 years ago was completely ridiculed. For instance, the National Institute of Health, which refused to even review a study with the word prayer in it 4 years ago, is now funding prayer studies through its Frontier Medicine initiative. So things are changing, and there's a dawning awareness that prayer has health benefits for people who pray as well as those that are being prayed for. And all of these studies, all the reports are remarkably consistent in suggesting the potential measurable health benefit associated with prayer or spiritual interventions. Now, Herbert Benson focused